Alright, we can get started again. Continue our discussion of navigation and orientation. Alright, so I fixed the sentence now. So this is what it should have said. And I've provided that edit on the owl. Okay, so let's move on from cognitive maths. Okay. So animals, to orient themselves, to know what direction they're going in, often also use celestial cues. So celestial cues can be the sun, stars, the moon, objects in the sky, right? Celestial objects. And when it comes to using the sun to orient, animals generally use the azimuth of the sun. So they may use the altitude, how high the sun is in the sky, to know time of day. But generally, what they're looking at is the azimuth. So that's the angle on the horizon from a reference point using the sun. The azimuth. They're not just using where the sun is in the sky. It's about angles in relation to the horizon and a reference point. So you can see here, the observer, the animal, looking to a reference point, and the angle between that reference point and the sun, directly down, that's the azimuth. You can see a picture here as well. And then at different times of the day, the angle is different, right? Another celestial cue that animals use to orient themselves is actually patterns of polarization of skylight. So skylight polarization is determined by the position of the sun. So because of that, animals can use it as a cue to navigate. So what you're seeing here is actually a picture of the sky. And you can kind of see these bands of polarized light. So polarized light can also be used as a compass. So there are different bands of light, and it moves throughout the day. You can see that a bit more closely here. See how it's lighter along the horizon and darker in the middle. We don't really see this. We don't really perceive it. But a lot of animals do perceive polarized light. One of my favorite examples of animals using celestial cues is actually with dung beetles.
The adder-flightless dung beetle. With many elephant and other large mammals around, there's always a steady supply of food. But it's still hard work. He has to move his food parcel to its safe hiding place. And it's a long way away. For him, the dung ball is huge, and it sometimes has a mind of its own. But he is determined. Despite his apparent clumsiness, he is remarkably clever. He uses the dung balls to find his bearings according to the position of the sun. And then it's back to work, heading in the right direction.
So dung beetles, their source of food is from animal dung, right? I think it's pretty cute that they call it a food parcel. But basically they have to push that little ball back home. And you can see when the dung beetle is on top of the ball, you just turn it around, gets its bearings, right? And in this case, using the sun to find out which direction should I go to go home. Pretty neat. But there are also species of dung beetles that are active more so at night than in the day, right? So at night, the sun isn't there, so you can't use it, right? Okay. So this researcher, Zach, was curious about how these dung beetles are transporting and orienting themselves at night. They don't have access to the sun, so what cues are they using to orient themselves home? So generally, dung beetles will move their food parcels in a straight line, pretty straight line, stretching about 90 meters. It's not super long distance. Okay. And again, they're doing this at night. They want to know what cues the beetles are using. At night, you still have different objects in the sky, right? Stars, got the moon, if the moon is available. What are these guys using? So what they did to some of the dung beetles in their experiment was they gave them these little helmets that blocked any view of the sky. I like this a lot. I think it's quite clever. It's also funny that somewhere, someone's job, create little helmets for dung beetles. Put them on to obstruct the view of the night sky, right? And what they found was when the starry sky is visible to the dung beetles, so without that helmet on, some beetles are taking a much more direct path to the correct location. So all the different colored lines are different individuals. And I'm pretty sure in the middle is the goal, where they're supposed to go, and they're tracking their paths. So how circular a path is, another word for that is its tortuosity. These paths are a lot more direct, right? When you compare to this side, so these are the beetles where they had no access to the sky. Kind of just going around in circles, right? They might get to the right place eventually, but it takes a while. So you can see that for these guys, being able to see the sky is pretty important. Alright, they wanted to investigate this even more. So how much are they using the moon are they using the starry sky? Okay. So what you're looking at here, some more data from their experiments. And they're out in the field, so they're in the wild. And on your y-axis, it's time to exit the arena. So they actually have a little arena that they're putting them in. And the beetles want to, get out of the arena, go in one direction, and get out. When they have access to the moon, that's when they're the fastest. Okay? So they're using the moon to know what direction to go in, they're not just going in circles. They're escaping the arena, they're exiting the arena very quickly. 20 seconds. Pretty fast, right? If the moon was not present, and all they have is a starry sky, right? Because some nights there's going to be no moon visible, new moon, but still have access to the starry sky, a little bit slower, but no significant difference there, right? So having the moon, having the starry sky, that's what the beetles are using. And you can see that when the beetles have a cap on that obstructs their vision, they're taking way longer to exit this arena, they're going in circles. And it's almost the same, it's basically the same as if it's an overcast night. So it's cloudy, beetles don't like that, they don't know where they're going, right? Or it takes them longer. Goes up to about 120 seconds. So they were also interested, right, in how many stars the beetles actually need. Unfortunately, you can't directly manipulate stars in the sky, but what you can do is go to a planetarium. And you can get certain lights, certain stars, off and on, right? Pretty cool. And they had different levels of amounts of the sky available to the beetle. And you can see this really nice trend that the less they have, the longer it takes them to exit an arena. You can see it starts to get slowest when there's only 18 bright stars in the sky. And when the Milky Way is visible, that's important. The more stars, the better, right? So they're using the Milky Way to know where to push their food parcels, which is pretty cool. To me, anyway. Something so big and vast, influencing such a little guy just pushing some poop around. I mean, that's kind of funny. I don't know, it's cool. So the dung beetles, they use actually the polarized moonlight. So we talked about polarized light, pretty important to a lot of animals. And they use that when it's available. But the stars in the Milky Way are even more dependable than the moon. So the moon waxes and wanes. Some nights it's not even there. So they'll use it. They'll use the light from the moon. But the stars in the Milky Way, they don't really disappear. Some nights, of course, it'll be overcast, but they're much more dependable. And this is also the first description of an insect using the Milky Way for orientation. Pretty neat. Love this picture. Moment of zen right there. All right. Okay. You use the sun, the stars, the moon, polarized light. Kind of know what direction you're going. There's another cue though that's often talked about. And that's Earth's magnetic field, which is always tricky because we can't perceive magnetic fields, right? So there are tons of magnetic fields in this room right now, coming off of all of your devices. Even in your brain, there's little magnetic fields. And there's the Earth's magnetic field too. Humans are actually the exception when it comes to perceiving the geomagnetic field. Most animals can perceive magnetic fields, but humans cannot, right? There is some work about humans being able to perceive magnetic fields. It's a little off the wall. I think it's an interesting area of work. Some people kind of dismiss it. But it seems like there might actually be individual differences with people. So some people might be more sensitive to magnetic fields than others. But really early area of research. And we certainly can't actively, consciously perceive them, right? But that doesn't mean we don't use them, right? So generally when we think of human beings using magnetic fields, you might think of someone navigating on a ship using a compass, right? A compass gives us information about north, west, east and south. And that's of course determined by Earth's magnetic field when you use a compass. But we need a tool, right? We can't just perceive it, unlike a lot of animals. Which is pretty cool. So animals from every single vertebrate class can sense magnetic fields. So here are all some examples of animals that sense magnetic fields. Even monarch butterflies can sense magnetic fields. Despite the fact, well, yeah, even bacteria can orient to magnetic fields, okay? So, we're the odd ones out here. Earth's magnetic field is actually fairly weak. So this is a measure of intensity. Just comparing it to the intensity of some other magnetic fields, a fridge magnet, or an MRI that has a much more intense magnetic field. Earth's magnetic field is actually pretty weak most of the time. And yet, these animals can perceive it and use it as a cue during migration. So all of these animals are using this as a cue during migration. That's where that evidence comes from. Okay. So a few different characteristics of Earth's magnetic field. So it's not just one cue, it has different parts to it. Kind of just touched on strength. But magnetic field strength is actually different depending on where you are on the globe. So it's weaker at the equator, generally, and stronger at the poles. So the fact that it's differently distributed on the Earth can give an animal important information, right, on where to go, because it's differently distributed, right, while they're moving. This isn't the only characteristic of Earth's magnetic field. Another important one to know, there's many characteristics, but intensity and inclination seem to be the most important for animals. when using Earth's magnetic field as a compass. So intensity and inclination. So what is inclination? So Earth's magnetic field, basically, there are magnetic field lines. Okay, so you can see these here. And they leave the South Pole, and they re-enter the North. Okay? There's lots of these. Lots of magnetic field lines. Field lines. And the angle between the Earth's surface, and the magnetic field line is what inclination is. Okay? So as you move along the Earth's surface, the inclination angle changes. At the magnetic north poles and magnetic south poles, it would be coming directly straight up and down. At the equator, it would be above. 0 degrees to 90 degrees. So again, inclination around the globe is distributed differently depending on where you are. So having that information, along with intensity, if you can perceive both those things, very useful to kind of know where you are on the Earth. The other one you might know is polarity. That's really only in terms of compass. Most animals don't really pay polarity in this way. They're often using intensity or inclination. The interesting thing about inclination is that it gives you that information about where you are on the globe, but really it only tells you if you're going poleward or equatorward. Right? It's not polarity. Because the inclination angle is the same at both poles.